Ask the Podcast Coach for March 20th, 2021.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music that means, hey, it's Saturday. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com, and joining me right over there is the one and only Jim Collison from TheAverageGuy.tv and the host of Home Gadget Geeks. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Oh, that's a nice intro. Happy Saturday morning to you, Dave, and glad that we are back on Ask the Podcast Coach. It's apparently spring is in the air. Have you?
We had a couple days where it got into the 50s. It's supposed to get up to 60 today here in Ohio. And for the record, 50 is not that warm. Yes, it's warmer than 18, but you still need a coat. So don't make me come over there because I will.
It's a little it kind of fakes you out. You're like 50. This is gonna be. You're outside in shorts. You know. No, okay, it's not that warm just yet. So, but it's on its way, I think. And
you know what'll warm you up?
Yeah, a little bit of coffee. Can you?
A little bit of coffee. We can hook that up. And of course, that coffee pour is brought to you by our good friend over at Mark at podcastbranding.co, which I'll throw up here on the screen. We are live at askthepodcastcoach.com/live. We're also in Clubhouse. If you have a question, feel free to raise your hand and we'll bring you up in just a minute. But Mark over at podcastbranding.co has a new podcast brand audit. In other words, like, give me a health check. How is my brand? And so if you put a lot of time and effort into creating your podcast, let's make sure you're doing the best you can for your brand. So on his website, he says the podcast brand audit is a detailed visual inspection of your podcast overall brand performed by Mark, podcast branding specialist. And the audit examines over 40 aspects of your show's visual identity. He says, I'll review your cover art, your social media, your different channels, your website, much more to ensure everything is working to your best advantage. And then I'll provide you with a detailed report on where your brand is working and maybe where it's not. You only get one chance to make a first impression, make the best impact you can. Order your podcast branding audit today at podcastbranding.co. And I just realized, I'm like, boy, this spot seems a little weird. You know why?
It seems a little flat because we forgot the music.
We forgot. I got done and I was like, oh, I need to hit the music. And what's really weird, do you not hear music at all?
I don't, no.
It's blinking. It's really here. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
I just didn't hit the button fast enough. But yeah, so anyway, go over and check out Mark at podcastbranding.co. I hit the button. And we should also talk about askthepodcastcoach.com/ I just removed Jim. I didn't want to remove Jim. There we go.
You're having a good morning.
Yeah,
this morning,
technology wise, I'm just not doing good. But if you would like to sponsor Jim's mug, is gone back to a generic mug, and you can sponsor Jim's mug by going to askthepodcastcoach.com/store. There are all sorts of other fun things. You can donate to Jim, you can donate to me, you can become an awesome supporter, and all that other fun stuff over at askthepodcastcoach.com/store. And of course, like I mentioned, we're at askthepodcastcoach.com/live. If you want to come and join the 17 people in our chat room, hello chat room. And also we've got, probably a dozen people in Clubhouse. If you have a question, we would be happy to answer those. I did have one. Here's the question I see a lot this morning out in Facebook land. And that was the whole website. And that is, here's one. In this case, it was Masha. She said, what's the benefit of having a standalone website for your podcast versus one that your host providers? So this could be Libsyn, Buzzsprout, Podbean, whoever. She said Buzzsprout provides a nice basic one that allows for streaming to various platforms and episode summaries, which is kind of all I need. I can even purchase a domain name and redirect and then run ads to that if I wanted to. Does anyone see the benefit of building your own website? I can see how it would be helpful, but not sure if it's worth all the extra work just to have an about page or a little extra info. And as I was reading that, I think the line that jumped out for me was the one she says, which is kind of all I need it to do. And I'm like, if that's what you need it to do, then by all means, That's it. I think you do need a website. I see some people are like, well, you don't really need a website. I'm like, I don't know if I'm down with that because of the Google juice. And, you can get people. It's going back to Mark with podcast branding. I see this all the time with these link trees, and that just makes my head explode. When somebody goes, oh, go to this page and you can, here's all my subscribe links, here's all my contact links. And if you want to do that, that's fine. Just do it on your own website. Mm-hmm. Again, it's another way to say your domain name. And she had mentioned that, that you can point a domain at the Buzzsprout page. And I'm like, absolutely. That's the one that always kind of makes me scratch my head as well when I see somebody that's like, yes, Jim sold his first company for $200 million. You can find him at, jimcullison.vaportrail.com. And I'm like, what? So I don't know, Jim, what are your thoughts on having a website?
Well, and you talked about three things in there. One is just having a generic landing page on your host provider that has that, usually not a very helpful URL. There's some things you can do to kind of trick that out, but that's one way. And it is low maintenance. And there's some folks who just want a podcast. So if you just want to create audio and you want to get it out there and you want to do the extra work and you want people to have a hard time finding you, which is generally the way it goes. That's kind of one method of getting done. Then the second method, you talked about the redirect. That's kind of that next step, right? Buy the URL, redirect it over. That third step then is actually a website. I think it's important for branding. I think it's one of those things that it's a reflection of you. Sorry, I'm having a little issue. Hold on one second.
It's that fun-filled coffee went down the wrong
I don't know. I think it's because I slept in this morning. I think that's the problem. Just
your body's rejecting
enough time to clear the throat. So with your own website, you really get an opportunity to just show your brand, show who you are, right? A lot of the sites, a lot of the media hosting websites, you don't have a lot of control over, some things here and some things there. We talk about Podpage all the time, and that's kind of even a step in between of kind of, you've got some pretty good controls over what you can do, but you can't totally do it your own way. It's still kind of a set laid out, right? So I think just kind of figure out where you want to be on that spectrum. Dave, setting up a WordPress site or whatever you decide to do, it's some work. So, you have to give it, make sure it's secure, and you're going to have to add some things to it. And we talked about Mark at Podcast Branding. Sometimes you have to pay people to get it branded right? So it's definitely a continuum. I wouldn't say any of those is wrong, right? I would just say, just depends what you want to do.
Yeah, it is like the ultimate. Yeah,
it's important to have I think it's important to have one. So you make the call. The old NFL 70s.
You make the call. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, and it does come down to, again, the favorite answer of all podcast answers, which is it depends. If all you need is somebody to subscribe and listen, then your default page is probably fine. I, again, would use a domain name, but now if I want somebody to sign up for a newsletter, that can get tricky because not all hosts allow you to put like that form on your website and blah, blah, blah. But I definitely think it's worth it. And the other thing is it's a great place to put all your notes. The one thing we should talk about is where that comes into problems and where having a separate site is when you're using your built-in host and you want to add images to your episode notes. Because the problem is your episode notes are also going into the RSS feed, and not that images will mess up your RSS feed, but the more robust you make that, the better the chance that the RSS feed is going to go. And then
they're trying to strip everything out. I mean, and some of them are stripping everything out.
Yeah.
So you're providing helpful links, getting stripped out. You're providing graphics, getting stripped out, right?
Yeah. Well, the other thing I'm like 90% sure of this because I had somebody contact me at Libsyn, and her links weren't showing in Spotify. Now, the fun thing is, if you go into whoever your media host is and you use their tools to make things bold and you add the links and this and that, no matter what you did it right, it's going to look different in different apps. And I believe I've now figured out that Spotify will only show a link if the link is HTTPS. Because this person sent me a question, and I was looking into it, and it was like, wow, that is really weird because her last episode was fine, but like 4 episodes before, like 2 links would show and 2 links wouldn't. And I was like, huh. So that's where you dust off the Sesame Street, one of these things doesn't belong here kind of thing. And I'm like, what's different about these? And I was like, they both have this and that. And then I was like, those two don't have HTTPS.
So they're stripping out unsecure links is what they're doing.
Basically. They just don't make it a link. And I was like, well, that's different. So,
well, I think everybody is. I think it's just a good reminder. And this is one of those technical things. When you're using links in on your website, one, if you're going to have a website, you have to have an SSL certificate to make sure that thing is secure. Like those days are over. So if you're not doing the work, in some cases, host providers do that for you now. So just make sure that's getting done. I don't know of a lot of places that aren't doing that anymore, or where it's it used to be a hassle to get that SSL certificate and get it installed on your site so that HTTPS would work. But if you're not including all your links as HTTPS, I think you're being penalized some. Like the crawler on Google does not like unsecure links either. So just make sure you've kind of cut it. It's no longer HTTP. Like those days are gone. Everything should be HTTPS, and we should be moving forward with that.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat room, Mr. Butterfield, said, what about Podpage? Yeah, Podpage is a great example, especially for people that I just want to set it and forget it. That's like the best. And they have a built-in SSL.
Yeah.
And
I love my Podpage. Like it's got a voicemail thing on it. It's got the links. Is it Brian, I think, over there at Podpage? Brendan. So the dude communicates a lot. Like you hear from him all the time. I mean, I don't know how he's still alive. Like he has to have been the hardest working guy in the last, hopefully he's got a team around him that's doing some of this stuff, but they've done some good work. Podpage is one of those exceptions where I kind of think like, well, okay, you got to kind of weigh that because it's got a ton of functionality.
Well, and he's adding the functionality. I just saw it, and he has a Facebook page. If you want to learn how to grow your product, go join the Podpage Facebook group because he goes in and says, "Hey, I'm thinking of adding this feature. How many people think this is important?" And then in some cases it's like, but the one he's adding right now is he's trying to come up with a way to like a guest form. Like if somebody says, "Hey, can I be on your show?" You're like, "Hey," and it's a built-in form that somehow, I'm not sure exactly what's going to go, but that's one of those that was just kind of brought on by people that use that product. They're like, "Hey, is there any way you can do like some sort of form for guests?" And he's like, "Let me go back and hack this out." So
and he does a nice job of it. I mean, they're done really well. So that's kind of the intermediate, I think, step. By the way, you can have a pod page and not have it can. It doesn't. You can have your own site and still claim and use your pod page. Podchaser is the same way, Dave. I mean, that thing continues to grow and expand at a ridiculous rate, and the list functionality in Podchaser is so good. I use it at work. The ability for it to create custom lists of podcasts that look great are fantastic. So if you haven't claimed your podcasts over at Podchaser, you should, and then take a look at some of the capabilities. And the site looks great.
I took a day once and went back through and put all the times I've appeared on other podcasts, which is in the hundreds, which looks impressive when you go to my profile. It's like he's appeared on 228 different podcasts.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it was fun. It was like in some cases I then
over there, you went over there and tagged yourself.
I forget it. That's the only part I sometimes have a hard time. There's a difference between my profile and then me as a host or something like that sometimes confuses me. So Coach Dave says here, Podpage offers a $20 a year legacy plan that allows you to park old shows. So if you're like, I'm done, I'm not gonna do any more episodes, but it's evergreen content and it promotes my service, you can actually use Podpage to make the website for you. And then that's a case where it's not going to go back and update and look for more episodes because, well, there aren't any.
Yeah, that'd be a great way to. I know on Libsyn you can downgrade your plan to like $5 or something like that to keep them there. Can you buy that? Like if I wanted to park a plan on Libsyn, could I do the same thing? Just buy a $5, or do you have to have it?
Yeah, no, you could do the $5 plan and then send the RSS feed to Podpage. But all the different plans, whether it's Podbean or all the media hosts, when you are paying somebody to host your media, when you no longer pay them to host their media,
Yeah.
they will no longer host your media. So that means your website doesn't, your files don't work, your RSS feed doesn't work. And I've seen a lot of people ask that. They're like, hey, you know, I'm going to be taking a break. And that's where you can downgrade. But if you actually close your account on any really media host, you're paying them to host your file. And when you close your account, they're not going to host your file anymore. So,
hey, Dave, how do folks on Clubhouse? So do they just
raise your
their
hand.
hand? Is that what they do? So if you're on Clubhouse right now and you got a question, that's kind of what we're looking for. If you want to jump in, you got a question, we're ad hoc. We can do just about anything. So if you're new to Ask the Podcast Coach on Clubhouse, just raise your hand. We'd love to have you jump into the conversation.
Yeah. I'm going to say Elaine. Oops, I hit the wrong one. That's always fun. Dave said, is it me or is Dave's picture mostly in his face not as sharp as Jim's? Yes.
I'm a little sharper than you, Dave. Let's just
that's always the case.
Generally.
I played with this morning. I looked fantastic last night. I rebooted my computer and things are back to caca. Every time I reboot my computer, I lose my video settings, and I've tried turning down. I look like crap right now. I look orange, and I've tried adjusting many things, and it's really weird because the Logitech software that I open up has fewer things. But if I open myself up in OBS and say, look at the video settings, I have a sharpness option, and I do not have a sharpness option in the default thing, and it's really, really confusing. But I think this was a question. I've been blogging, but I'm switching to podcasting. Well, that's good. That's how I started. What do I need to look for in choosing a podcast hosting platform? Taking into the account, I have no money right now to pay for a hosting site. Elaine, don't do it for free. If we're talking like $15 a month, and if Jim's coffee, by the time this show is over, if Jim was paying for that coffee, he'd spend $15 because it's really $15 to $20 to get going. So, but what are you looking for? Number one, accurate stats. So that comes in handy. You want support because, well, you're going to have questions. And then for me, there are two different varieties of, there's two payment plans for podcasts. So you have the Blueberry, the Libsyn, the Podbean kind of version. And that is, you get X amount of space per month to upload files, and you can have unlimited number of downloads, and your bill doesn't go up at all. So the only limit is how much can I upload per month? And every month they give you a new bucket to fill up. Then you have the Spreaker and the Captivate model, which is you can have as many podcasts, you can have as many episodes, you can just go crazy, you make a whatever, go to town. Oh, by the way, the more downloads you get, the more expensive it gets. And if I was on their camp, I would say, well, that's okay. If you're getting more downloads, now you have room for sponsors, which I'm like, oh, that's an interesting thought. But so that's the two, and you're just looking for support. Don't use SoundCloud. SoundCloud now has received over $500 million in they have like 71, and they got another like 70 million. And we're all just like going, why won't that thing go away? So don't use SoundCloud. They haven't updated since 2017. I wouldn't use Squarespace for my podcast. They do great websites, but I prefer either Podbean, Blueberry, Libsyn. I like the ability to say, look, I got a $15 bill and I don't care how many downloads I have. I don't want to have to worry about that. The other thing I look for is don't limit how many episodes I can have in my back catalog. So there are some out there that are like, oh, it's X amount a month and you get X amount of storage for your episodes. I want that. I mean, we've got 337 episodes of this one. I've got 700 plus episodes on that. But I would just, if you want to use free, it's kind of like using training wheels, which, I used when I was riding a bike, but I just, the free stuff, I clean up a mess every single day. I am cleaning up a mess caused by a free media host, and it's just, you get what you pay for. So, Jim, anything else on your side?
I think you covered it pretty well. I think, I guess I would say, and I would be remiss if I didn't throw in my host provider at Maple Grove Partners.
Yeah.
$10 a month plans.
But that's not for your podcast.
Yeah, no, it's for both the website and media hosting. He does both.
Ooh,
yeah,
interesting.
It's an all-in, it's boutique. Let's just be really honest.
Right.
I mean, it was built for podcasters, and it was really built for me. He just built a business around it. He was like, hey, I'm interested in doing this.
Right.
Show me what you do and how can we price this in a way that makes sense. So you get web and media hosting for $10 a month. I would say maplegrovepartners.com. I would say though, if you're into the money, question, like I don't have any money, to the way you started this, give something up. Like find like cancel Netflix. You're going to need to cancel it anyways, because you're not going to have any time to watch Netflix once you start podcasting. Like it's going to take a lot of time. Or cancel one of those online subscriptions, or find a couple of them to get canceled and buy a plan. I think I'm with you. You get what you pay for in this space. And you could get started on Anchor. You can do it that way if you want to get going. And there's a lot of people that are doing it and using it and getting it done that way. But I kind of like to stick with the companies that are in this for the long haul. And
somebody asked me the other day, they're like, well, there's this new media host. And I said, okay, when somebody comes up and says, hey, there's a new car manufacturer, it's Ganoiken. It's the Ganoiken car. It's awesome. And it's, from people that used to work at whatever. And you're like, great. Now I'm going to go buy a car. I can go buy a Ford. I can buy a Chevy. I can buy a Toyota or a Honda, or I can buy a Ganoiken. And I'm like, am I going to like let Ganoiken cut their teeth on me? Or,
right.
And it's really like, so that's.
I think Yugo is the company that did that, by the way, right?
Yeah.
I haven't said that word in a long time. That 80s European manufacturer that made this the cheapest cars possible
ever. Yeah. I still remember there was an SNL skit, and it was like, forget the name of the fake brand, but it was a car made out of mud. It was like, and if you got in an accident, you just went out and reshaped your car. It was great fun.
Well, lick it, just kind of, okay, it'll be good. Yeah, I think you kind of get what you pay for. And so it's a good idea to look at them all. So
yeah. But the great thing is you've got the hard part. You've got content. So Chris Christensen is coming up on the stage, awesome. And we've got Jonathan coming up in just a bit. But Chris, we hear him so much better if I turn up the channel.
A little bit.
Okay. There we go.
Hey, Chris.
How are you?
I'm good. The SNL skit you're thinking of was the Adobe.
The Adobe, yes. Thank you, sir.
Which ends with the people who are in their white outfits going to play tennis, and they've been sitting in Adobe clay. So
nice.
Kind of fits the theme of this morning, Dave, as we were talking about comedy skits in the very beginning.
Nice. What can we help you with, Chris?
That was it. I just had that comment.
Oh,
I
is
agree
it?
with
Thank
what
you
guys were talking about.
Thank you so much. There we go.
Thanks for jumping in and clarifying our jokes.
Yeah,
we kind of need an audience for that, just to kind of get all the details right.
Well, I was tempted to start doing Ask the Podcast Coach. I was going to go find the clip of Laverne and Shirley, where it's like Laverne and Shirley was filmed in front of a live studio audience. And I was like, if I do that, then I don't have to edit the show. Like, it's just, hey, it's live.
Right on.
You get what you get.
We need a laugh track, though. If we're going to do that, we need a laugh track.
That would be so bad.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we're going to bring Jonathan up on stage and see what kind of question he has. Jonathan, welcome aboard.
Hey guys, how you doing? It's Jonathan Mosen from the Mosen at Large podcast, and I got no sympathy for you, Jim, if you slept in, because it's not even 4 a.m. here because I'm in New Zealand. It's Sunday morning.
Yeah. So how's the future? Is it okay? Is everybody okay?
The future is bright. It's so bright I got to wear shades, man. And
I like it. it.
So I got out of bed to talk to you guys, but
wow,
I wanted.
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. I wanted to have a talk about the podcast host topic that you were just chatting about. It's one of those subjects, isn't it? I've been podcasting since 2004, and every so often I go to Reddit or various things and try and help people out, and it's that perennial question. There are a couple of things that people don't seem to mention very much. The one that really intrigues me is that Buzzsprout, which, I really like all their social media and all that they do. They contribute a lot to the community. But I could never use them because they re-encode your audio. And this is the thing that really, gets to me. I am really particular, like you, Dave. I mean, I love the way you process Everything you do is so pristine. And so if somebody re-encodes my audio, I kind of get a bit grumpy about that. I mean, some people may not mind, but they encode it down to 96K,
96
I think,
mono,
no matter what you do.
And here's the thing that drives me nuts is if you can have them, it's called magic mastering, where they basically tie in the background of Auphonic, but they'll then export it at 192 stereo. And I'm like, so I can't get... Now for the record, I need to go over and try their magic mastering because this might be an option, but it sure doesn't look like it when I look at the help documentation. But it's either 192 stereo or 96 mono, and I'm like, I'm a big fan of 128 stereo, and
that's all you need for a podcast.
Yeah, and
but I don't want mono. So for my podcast, I've invested in something that a lot of podcasters don't bother with. I paid for a bunch of jam jingles. And I really like them, and I'm certainly not going to have them compressed to hell and down to mono. So that rules it out for me. The one that I don't think I've ever heard you mention, David, I'd be really interested in your view about it, is I switched to Pinecast a while back, and I really like them. It's a one-person shop.
Yeah.
So when I switched, I sort of said to him, so what happens if you get run over by a bus, man? I mean, he's really responsive, and you can get him all the time, and he's got a good deal. And that's one of the reasons why I raised my hand, because he's got a kind of a hybrid with those two models that you're talking about. You can pay at their base plan, it's $10 a month. You can have as many episodes as you want and unlimited downloads. But for that $10 a month tier, the one limitation he imposes is 80 megs per episode. That's not really, 80 megs per episode. Yeah. That's not really too bad. For most podcasters, and he's got a pretty good suite of tools there. So that's another one. I think Pinecast is worth consideration as well.
Yeah, you're right. He is very responsive. I started a podcast called Podcast Rodeo Show, and it wasn't supposed to go longer than a month because I had so many people saying, "What do you think about Pinecast?" Because when he first came out, he was only charging $5. Now he figured it out a while ago that it's not a great business model, but he does. He's probably the most a la carte guy I see, where it's like, I want this, but I could use this, but I don't need that kind of thing. And if I had one thing that I would say about is he's not IAB certified, but if you're not doing advertising, that may not be that important to you. But his stats are pretty cool. I'm on I'm grandfathered in at like the $5 plan. I don't know what his advanced stuff looks like, but he is super responsive, and the support over there is great. But that's definitely one worth checking out.
Yeah, he's really good value. And the other thing too is that I'm totally blind. I think I was the first totally blind podcaster, and he really cares about accessibility. So that's something in his favor as well. If you ever get desperate for guests over on the School of Podcasting, I'd love to talk with you about how blind people podcast. And actually, blind people make really good podcast listener feedback people, because we're so particular about our audio. We've consumed it all our lives, and it's a pretty interesting niche to be in.
Well, what's your website?
Mosen.org, MOSEN.org, and I run my blog and my podcast from there, and producing about 3 hours of content every week, and we're getting a few thousand listeners every week. So it's kind of cool when you can pick a niche like that. And my podcast is really totally targeted at blind people. We talk about current affairs and a wide range of issues, but through a blindness lens. How does this affect blind people? And it's interesting because it's something that just a lot of people aren't doing, And so when you can pick a niche like that people aren't tapping into, it's amazing what you can get.
That's it. You get that whole "holy cow, that guy's talking to me" effect going on.
Yeah.
Jonathan,
awesome.
Did you really wake up for us, or are you like Dave and I and you just don't sleep anymore because you're old?
I actually do look forward to it. So I do my podcast live as well. Thanks to a couple of suggestions, I now use StreamYard, which is also accessible. So that's one of the big barriers that blind people have to overcome, is first of all, you think this is a cool tool. And then you think, well, is this actually accessible with a screen reader?
Right.
And sadly, a lot of the podcast industry either doesn't know or doesn't care that blind people use this stuff. And so we get shut out of a lot of good stuff. But StreamYard is pretty good. And so I now jump on there and stream it live, as well as the internet radio station I run. So I get some really useful tips, and that's the thing. I've been doing it since 2004, but you never stop learning.
Right. Yeah. And I don't think, to your point, I don't think they don't care in a mean way. I just don't think they don't know sometimes. Like, because it's not affecting, because we see it doesn't affect us. It's if you don't really understand the problem, it's not there. I think you bringing it up, though, is good awareness. And I am guilty of the alt tag sin of making, my graphics, right? Yeah. I'm guilty of it. And it's not that I don't care. It's just and Microsoft is actually doing a bunch of changes on some of the sites that they run, LinkedIn and such, where they at least prompt you to put the alt tags in, so, to say, hey, not every, you're uploading a graphic. Not everybody can see this. You should consider the alt tag, right? You don't have to put it in, but that's one of those areas where I think we could do a better job of prompting people to put it in. If it becomes a requirement, or if it becomes something at least it's visible to us. In the old days, you just uploaded graphics. You weren't thinking, you think, well, a full, what's the percentage of people of the global population that is blind? Do you have that stat when handy?
I mean, I think you probably have about 1 to 2% of the internet using. So I mean, it's not huge.
Well, but it's people, more though. It's still people, and
that's exactly right.
Right. It's just a matter of making a few changes. So I think we could get better in our platforms about prompting, so it reminds people, you need to put this there so that someone who can't see the screen and is using a screen reader can see it. So it's great for awareness, Jonathan, for sure.
Yeah, and that said, it works both ways. It's important for blind people to be, speaking up a little more. And I actually, as an experiment, I invested in the full Podfest subscription that concluded a wee while ago. And that was an interesting experience for me, because there was so much on diversity that people were celebrating, which is fantastic. People with a range of ethnic backgrounds, women podcasting, but there was virtually zilch about blind people or disabled people podcasting. And then I found that my ability to participate was hindered by the pretty marginal app that they use on iOS from an accessibility perspective. But I figure unless I just keep making these points and find ways to get out there and let people, remind them that we're here, we're not going to get any change. And Clubhouse is good for that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Do you, Jonathan, have you ever thought about consulting on that? Offering a package to podcasters to say, hey, for X number of dollars, I'll run an audit on your site and help you make it accessible?
It's a really interesting question. So I've been doing it from the other end. I do an audio book called Unleash Your Inner Podcast, which is kind of if you're a blind person, how do I podcast when there are so many hostile things? Yeah. And that sells really well. I run a thing here on Clubhouse called The Blind Podmaker, which is a title I'm pretty proud of, actually. Yeah. And we do things for blind people. But no, I haven't really thought about reaching out to the podcast community. One of the challenges, actually, is that I have thought about reaching out to the podcast industry as a whole through Clubhouse on some of the clubs that they have here. But I'm following a lot of them, and they've made me a member of a couple of them. But I can't start any rooms on any of them. Mm. I don't have that privilege.
Yeah.
You need to, I think Steve Olsher is the guy behind, I think it's Pod Club or Pod something.
Yeah. Well, if you can ping him for me, because I've been trying to get his attention so I can start a room on his club, which has a lot of members. But as I say, I don't have the privilege to actually start a room. I pop in there from time to time and contribute. But I can't actually create a room to say, hey, guys, have you ever thought about how your podcast or your podcast tools can be used by a blind person? Here's a little presentation. And I'd love to do that.
Oh, it's a good, just a great reminder. It's one of these things we need to, at 1 or 2%, it seems small, but if you're in that 1 or 2%, it's awful. You get in it.
Yeah.
Just listen. For our seeing friends, close your eyes and turn on the screen reader and try to do what you normally do just off voice prompts, and you will find out very, very quickly you're going to struggle. and go to your own website and turn on the screen reader and see what it's hover over things and see what it's saying. You may have I did that one time. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got some work to do, to get this.
And the thing is, a screen reader is a brand new tool, so it is going to confuse people. But what I would highly recommend is if you want to know how well your website is working out or your podcast tool, actually reach out to a real blind person who knows what they're doing and ask them and get some good quality feedback.
Well, I'd encourage you to put a package together, make it reasonable, make it a $99 audit that you would go in and give them. And then maybe it comes with an optional coaching package where you would join them, a one-on-one to help them walk through some of those things. I think that's a pretty reasonable for some podcasters. Cool. That might be a really helpful thing to have. So
cool idea. Yeah.
Thanks for waking up for us. I know you're already awake.
I'm wide awake now. Yeah. All right.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for jumping in. You bet.
Cheers.
Great to have you. Cheers.
Thanks,
man. And Chris Christensen has his hand raised again. Chris, I don't know if that's on purpose or not, but we will get to that in just a second. Right now, Jim is thirsty.
I know, we're halfway through.
So we're gonna thank our awesome supporters, and that does include the Dog Podcast Network is still a teacher's pet. You can find that at dogpodcastnetwork.com. I just listened to an episode on how French bulldogs, Lady Gaga had her dogs kidnapped. That's like going on all the time, like insane amounts. And then also in that same episode, I got to learn why is the dog humping everything? That was part of it. And it's a great podcast because by the time I walked around the block, it was pretty much done. And that's really what their podcasts are designed for. So you can also win some money out there at Dog Podcast Network. They're looking for stories, and you can win up to $5,000. And also, here, we'll do this. We have a new awesome supporter, and that is Chris Spangle over at wearelibertarians.com. In fact, he has a whole network of shows, and they even have a thing over there like, what the heck is a libertarian? If you want to know, go over to wearelibertarians.com as part of the network. And I want to say thanks to Chris for becoming a new awesome supporter. I was very happy to see.
They have a show called Boss Hog of Liberty.
Yes, Boss Hog of Liberty.
Any show with Boss Hog in it. It's gotta be good. I'm
surprised Boss Hog hasn't been canceled at this point. You know what I mean?
No, totally. Yeah. If you go back and watch those old shows, you're kind of yikes.
Kenny Wayne Shepherd, to take a quick tangent, Kenny Wayne Shepherd got an award or nominated. Kenny Wayne Shepherd's a blues guitarist, and they took away his nomination because he owns a General Lee, which had the Confederate flag. He's like, look, I was a big fan of the show. Anyway,
all right. Not to get political. We don't get political here. We're not getting political.
But we do get presidential, and we do like President Jackson. Even though, speaking of people that were racist and bad, that's one of those, like my grandma used to say, "You're
this is degrading quick, Dave."
Eject. Hey, let's thank Shane over at spybrary.com. Who actually got some play in the local newspaper. I saw that on his Facebook play. Ed Sullivan over at soniccupcake.com. So if you need an editor, check out Ed. Felix over at the Latin Podcast Awards, which is powered by the Audio Dice Network. You can find that at Latin Podcast Awards. So if you want to get your Latin on, it's a good place to start. Glenn the Geek Hebert over at horseradionetwork.com. Glenn actually inspired me to make a new t-shirt that says, "Don't be boring." And with the School of Podcasting name underneath of that, but I sent one over to Glenn because it's his thing. Nice. You can find Glenn over at horseradionetwork.com. Max Trescott up in the air at aviationnewstalk.com. So if you're a pilot and want to get your aviation talk on, check it out, aviationnewstalk.com. Greg over at debtshepherd.com. So if you're wetting your pants right now about taxes and freaking out, you know what? He teaches financial wellness. So check out Greg over at debtshepherd.com. Toastmasters 101 is the home of Kim Craggy. If you want to develop your voice, reduce your editing time, and improve your content, well, doggone it, Toastmasters101.net. What's wrong with you if you're not over there? You had to listen to last week's show to get that. The Indie Drop-In Network. IndieDropIn.com. This is where Greg is taking shows that are either true crime or comedy or some sort of scary story, and he's putting them in front of an audience. So he's developing the audience. You send him your content, and he will put that in front of that, and you can find that over at IndieDropIn.com. So if that's you, true crime, comedy, or scary time, check him out, IndieDropIn.com. Michael, who is in the chat room, Michael, do me a favor, resend that slide. I know this is still the wrong one, and you can find
it. Looks good though.
It does look good. Slide. It's cool. Yeah. Find Michael where he's, where podcasting and hard work are made fun. You can find him at babymountainradio.com. And if you'd like to be an awesome supporter or see the other awesome supporters, go over to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. And if you would like to sponsor the mug, do a one-time donation, any of that fun-filled stuff, buy my book, Profit from Your Podcast. That's all available at askthepodcastcoach.com/store. So thank you to all those lovely people. And again, if you have a question, if you're listening in Clubhouse, feel free to raise your hand. If you are watching live at askthepodcastcoach.com/live and want to jump in, preferably with clothes on, just go to askthepodcastcoach.com/join and you can jump right into the video, or just leave your question right there in the chat room. And I'm trying to find my Trello because right now we do have a hand.
I think we got Dave there. And
there we go. Clubhouse. Tristan is coming up here.
Oh, okay, good.
And I hit the wrong button. There we go. I always click on their profile instead of clicking on the microphone button. So Tristan, how are you, buddy? What can we help you with?
Good. Keep popping up. Just looking at stats and conversations with you. I don't know if this is your own normal day of business, but I've been playing around with the new version of Libsyn, and they've adjusted a little bit how they report the stats, and it's more helpful with showing you 7-day, 30-day, 90-day, and lifetime. And I find that a much more helpful way of thinking about stats with a breakdown. But I just wondered whether you give us any advice on what sort of more standard or what's better to report to other people for comparisons.
Well, first of all, don't compare yourself to others. That will ruin your attitude like nobody's business. Like overnight, I've seen people go, I can't believe I have 150 people listening to me. And then somebody walks into Facebook and goes, hey, we just went over 600 downloads an episode. And the first person is now crushed. And I'm like, we don't know what that person is doing. They might have a more wide niche, things like that. So the one that sponsors are looking for is, and people don't do this, it's number of downloads per episode, not per month. Per month will make you sound like you're Tony Robbins or whatever. It's number of downloads per episode after 30 days. So that's why what he's talking about is in the new Libsyn 5, there's a column now where you can see how many downloads did each episode get after 7 days, which some might feel that's a good kind of representation of maybe your subscribers or your super fans. And then you've got 30 days, which is the one you would report to any kind of sponsors, that if somebody says, how big's your audience? You can say, well, after 30 days, our episodes average, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got the 90 day, which is 90. I guess at that point, that's your really long tail. But that's the one that most people look at is number of downloads per episode after 30 days. And
Dave, I look at month by month too. So I have Spreaker for our plans at Gallup, in that annual view of month over month. So how did I do last month? One of the things I think would be helpful is if I kept track of what I did last year this month, which is harder to get in Spreaker stats. So I'd have to keep track of that myself, but that's also a very helpful stat to like, what were we doing this time last year? Tristan, I don't think there's any one that's good. I think them all in combination with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, so thanks for that. What I've been doing is trying to compare maybe versus the 90-day or versus the lifetime, but 90 days is probably more easy to do, to try and go, what's my proportion of subscribers versus lifetime, and see if I can increase that as a proportion over time, or get more listeners and more subscribers. Just trying to think of it as a relative metric, like a multiple rather than a number to compare.
Yeah. I do like the 7-day idea, Dave, of catching that week and then comparing that to the 30-day of saying, okay, what's kind of the delta there, and then comparing that over time by episode. I think is a really good way to kind of see what I always think is just crazy is the variation in downloads by episode, even on that 7-day number. You know, you're like, this is why does it swing so much? And it just does. Like it's you would think it would get to be a really, really stable number. And it's not. That thing swings around quite a bit.
Some of that might be the headline you use, like the title of that.
Yeah. But if
and
you're
then
anticipating people downloading it automatically, you know, this is what I'm thinking. Is I've got 1,000, let's just say, people who download it. I don't ever look at the titles of anything I'm downloading and things I've subscribed to. Like I just download it because that's what happens, right? So that variation. Go ahead.
I was thinking more for like SEO and people sharing it and things like that. But
I just think there wouldn't be that much variation that early. Like you would think, man, does SEO kick in the first 7 days? You know, it to me the early numbers, and I'm not saying this is a thing of Libsyn. I'm saying this is in general. I see this on Spreaker all the time too. Where that the first, when you release that thing, man, that number flies all over the place in the first couple days of download. So it's kind of weird. You'd think it'd be more stable, but it's not.
Yeah. Anything else we can help you with?
No, that's good. But just my battery died. I had to switch over for a second. I lost you for a minute. But with the titles, what I have seen interesting is someone else in another Clubhouse room was telling me that a hack of, even though you're not getting listeners to your YouTube channel, often the title there can help the ranking because Google likes YouTube. And I just did some research that the titles, sometimes I could try a different title for the show versus the page that I host it on my own site, because the keywords of putting that person's front keywords, they start ranking really well, depending on how big that person is. And I get more listens, I think, from the last couple of weeks with testing that out, versus putting the more interesting words at the front, which I do with the podcast name.
Yeah. Awesome.
So anyway, this is another thing.
Where can we find your show?
It's called the Cliff Notes Podcast at cliffnotespodcast.com.
Awesome. That's easy to remember.
There we go.
Good job, Tristan. Stay safe out there, by the way, in the traffic. It sounds like you're in the middle of London traffic. So.
Yeah. But yeah, I've said for years, headlines, your title, you know, if you think about it, the name of your show, in theory, hopefully grabs people's attention to where they click on that. And then they're like, and so you're looking at your description and they're looking at the titles of your episodes. And that's what's going to help them go, do I want to subscribe to that? And I've seen people, I had a client once that, you know, they were doing the whole episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. I'm like, that is not inspiring anyone to click on your show.
To have that at the very first.
Well, no, that was the only title.
Oh,
you know, and I see this a lot with radio shows where it'll be like, it's the, you know, the Spencer Davis show, January 15th, Spencer Davis show, January 16th. And I'm like, there had to be one thing. Like, you know, I had a client of mine that did a show on radio in New York, and I could not get her. I'm like, did you not have a piece of paper in front of you as you were doing the radio show? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, send me those notes. And I'm like,
yeah,
because it was always just the name of her name and then the date. And I'm like, that's like, please tell me I can change your title. And she's like,
do you think putting your own name up front though would build SEO a little bit? In other words, so Dave Jackson on, and then Dave Jackson on, right? Fill in the blank there. Do you think that would? And that's probably a Daniel question, just to be honest.
I mean,
Daniel's in the chat room. Daniel, throw that in. Is that a bad thing on SEO or a good thing to have your own name in the titles?
If your name's already in the title of the show, that's the one that always makes me scratch my head as well. So if I, you know, the name of the show is Ask the Podcast Coach. So if I then in the title of the episode put Ask the Podcast Coach, you know, and then put, looking at stats or whatever for the title, to me, I don't know that having it twice is going to get you. I mean, I understand that the title of the episode is one of the few things, along with the author field, that Apple searches. But I'm like, if you're in one, do you need two? Is that just overkill?
Tristan made a good point, though. He put I think he was saying there, he was cutting out on us, but I think he was saying he put the guest's name up front, and that was good from an SEO standpoint. So, we just had a guest on Home Gadget Geeks, and I've been doing that a lot where I put the guest at the very, very front. It also makes it easier to find later. So,
yeah, Daniel says the name is already searched in the name field. So, it's a little overkill.
Redundant there if you.
Yeah.
And it's an ego play, though. Like, that's an ego play for sure, to have every title have your own name in it. That'd be, I wouldn't be comfortable with that, just to be honest.
Yeah, and then some people say, well, what about the episode number? Where do I put that? And some people put it up front because they'll have like EP 337, and it looks cool. And I'm like, okay.
I still do that. Should I stop?
Well, I understand it works. It helps for search. So if I say, hey, on episode 213, we talked about such and such, but I'm always like, but couldn't I put the 213 in the description and have it show up?
URL too. So, I make a pretty link for each episode.
Yeah. So,
I do the title and then dash HGG for whatever from a visibility standpoint. No one's ever told me I should or I shouldn't from a listening standpoint. Like, hey, would you stop putting that crap at the end of your title? Like, whatever. So
that's it. Well, he's back. The amateur traveler himself, Mr. Chris Christensen. How are you, buddy?
Hi, Dave. First time listener, long time caller. So there's just some point where you can't not call in and offer opinions. So one thing to think about with the title. So first of all, if you're doing the Apple title, they don't want the episode numbers in the Apple title.
Right.
Now I know Libsyn, for instance, has a different field for that, but they've specifically said they want that in the episode field. But I still start with, for me, it's AT pound 747, the amateur traveler episode number for this particular episode. But the big thing to think about with the title, so I wouldn't include your name, even though, remember, this is not just going to be in, iTunes or Apple Podcasts, but this is going to be generated into different web pages on different services that read that feed. But the big reason I wouldn't put it there is for the people who already know you, they've pretty much found you. You're not that hard to find. You're putting that title in for two things. One is for your current listeners to understand whether this episode is one they care about. But largely, though, you're putting it in there for your back catalog so that when someone, in my case, I do a travel show, Amateur Travelers, Dave said. And, I've had people who found me because they literally go into Apple Podcasts or whatever their podcast player is and say, travel Azerbaijan. Or wherever they're trying to go, and I've had people who said, I found you because you were the only episode, the only podcast who'd ever covered Azerbaijan, or I've had people who've said, I found you because I was looking for something we were going to Budapest and I found your episode. So that's the reason why you don't put episode 1 is not really for the people who are reading the new episode, but for the back catalog, it's even more important. If you want to have a back catalog where people go back and find you accidentally, it's for discovery. So that's, that title is really important. I used to do really funny, clever titles for This Week in Travel when I was doing that show, and it really was bad SEO. And even with the guest name, I would put the guest name in there, but unless you have a guest that people are searching for, it's better to just put that in the subtitle or something else like that. But, if you have the leading rap musician or the president of the U.S. or something like that, absolutely put it in the title. But only really it matters if it's something that people they're looking for that person.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Chris, is it
catch up?
Chris, hold on real quick. Is it Budapest or Budapest?
Budapest.
Ooh,
it's both. Mix them in there.
Man, I've been pronouncing that wrong my whole life.
That's okay. We all do.
Awesome.
So, a couple other thoughts on some of the topics earlier. One was it was fun to hear Jonathan. I always loved running into people who started before I did, because I started a latecomer. I didn't start till 2005, but. So I host with Libsyn. Getting back to the hosting discussion, Libsyn is my fourth host. Even though I started that long ago, and I went to Libsyn in 2009 or 2010. And, you talk about going with that new host provider. First of all, I started by hosting my own podcasts on a server in my front room, running an old Mac. Nice. And that had a direct internet connection. And it's kind of like the equivalent of hosting it on your current web property. And, the only difference is that when it failed, because Apple promoted my podcast way back in 2005, right around the time of the first Podcast Expo, I didn't get charged the huge bill that some people have gotten when they get promoted and they're doing hosting on their, Bluehost account or something like that. You can get a large bill if you try and host on your web platform. But that server did all but catch fire. I mean, I lost a lot of listens because it could not, literally, it could not stay running during that time. So that's one of the reasons why you don't want to be doing your own hosting, certainly not on your machine in the back room, but certainly also not on your typical web host that's just not made to handle that, or it's not contractually willing to handle that. And then I went to Fruitcast. I don't even know, Dave, if you remember Fruitcast.
Yeah. They were
okay.
I mentioned them in before there was profit from your podcast, there was more podcast money, and Fruitcast was one of the early places you could get sponsors.
They were 2005 doing ad inserts. I think they still owe me $200 because they went out of business in something like 6 months. It was pretty quick. They weren't up for very long. And then I missed one. And then I hosted actually on my company's machine, but we were a big web hosting company. So we had the capability of doing that without being a problem because my boss let me do that. And then I went to Medio. And Medio, was a real big deal back in the day, but then they decided they were going to do all video podcasts really and dropped the audio podcasts and then went to Libsyn. So you said, the first thing you would look for, and I thought the first thing I'm looking for is stability. Yeah. I'm looking for somebody who's going to be there. I keep hearing people talk about, you should use this one. It's the easiest one to use. And I'm thinking, are any of them really hard anymore? I used to edit my own RSS feed. Libsyn, for instance, is not making some of the people's list. It's not as easy to use. I don't understand why, because you upload your file, you describe it, you press publish. That seems pretty easy to me. So, but I think that's true with all the hosts. I don't really find one out there that's making me do something complicated. So the people who are, when you search for what's the best host, you're going to find the posts that are written for the affiliate links and probably have never tried all those hosts.
That's it.
And, they're going to tell you the one who's willing to pay and not necessarily the best one out there. And ease of use is not really the issue anymore. Yeah. Stability would be number one. Now, ad insertion, I think, is worth talking about. Can I get ad insertions into my show? Do I want them? Do I not want them? Do I have control over them? That's something that isn't going to be relevant right away, but it's going to be relevant eventually if you're planning on building up a big audience. So that's one thing I would look for. I would look for compliance, though, with the privacy guidelines that are coming out there now, like the GDPR and the California privacy guidelines, and some of the hosts are not going to do as well with that, and that could cause some problems. I would definitely look for, who has had bad experiences with people. Do they let you transfer your show out? Those are the kind of things that I would look for over, I think, some of the things that were mentioned earlier. And then one last thing, Jonathan mentioned doing a stereo show, and which is fine if you got the music and you really love it, as long as you don't do stereo with the audio where you put the guest in one ear and the host in the other ear. It is a hot button for those of us who will walk around all day with one earbud. And I've only heard half your show. We heard all the questions, but we never heard any of the answers. So
awesome. All right.
I am Chris, and I am done speaking.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for jumping back in. That'd be a good show title. I heard all the questions and none of the answers. Something like that.
But and Carolyn, stick around. I see you got your hand up. We will answer your question in post show. So it's going to sound like we're done, but we're not done.
Stay around, Clubhouse. Don't leave.
Stick around, Clubhouse. We got another 30 minutes.
Half an hour of content.
Jim, are you back from your break?
I am back from our break. We had Raz from Flow Water. Let's get that in there, from flowwater.com. They make these faucet devices that are very, very technical, that clean your water. And so we kind of talked about the crisis that's going on with plastic in our water systems, both watered bottle and in municipal systems. And it was just a fun show. So if you want to come out, if you're ever concerned about the quality of the water that you drink and the technology that goes into it, head out to theaverageguy.tv a little bit later today.
And on the School of Podcasting, I actually have an interview coming up at 2 p.m. where I'm interviewing Harry Duran about a podcast he's doing that's hyper niche. So it might be that, or it might be the fact that I want to do something with my podcast, but I'm afraid I'm going to wet my pants. And how do you kind of overcome that? And I actually did some consulting at a hugely discounted rate with the idea of, hey, we're going to do consulting, but I'm going to probably use this in an episode. And so I think I might use one of those this week. The good news is that's so much better than I don't know what I'm going to talk about. It's like it's either this, that, or that. I'm trying to figure it out.
You got 3 weeks covered at that point, right?
Yeah, just about.
Yeah,
so thanks to the chat room. Thanks to Clubhouse. Again, hang around. We're not done. And if you'd like to hear what we're going to talk about in the next 30 minutes, go to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome and become an awesome supporter. Stick around.